The wind howled through the narrow streets of New York City, sending flurries of snow swirling across the pavement. It was one of those bitterly cold evenings that made even the toughest people pull their collars higher and tuck their hands deep into their pockets. Alex, just 16 years old, trudged through the snow, his breath coming out in frosty bursts as he made his way home. His jacket, worn and frayed at the edges, did little to protect him from the harsh winter chill. It was an old thing, one that had been passed down from his older brother before he had moved out, and it was barely enough for the biting winds that swept through the streets. As Alex walked, he couldn't help but think about how much he had to juggle in his life. His mother, Emily, was a nurse, working long shifts at a local hospital. She was the backbone of their small family, always on her feet, always providing, but often too tired to spend much time at home. Alex had grown used to it. After school, he worked a part-time job at a local cafe, washing dishes and helping the barista during the busy evening rush. It was a small job, but it made a difference. His mom didn't make a lot of money, and every extra dollar helped stretch their tight budget. Today had been particularly long, with school and work overlapping, but he never complained. It was part of life. Alex pushed through the cold, his mind still focused on the hours of studying he had ahead of him. The midterms were approaching, and he had to make sure he did well. His grades had to stay high if he ever wanted to make something more of himself. He couldn't let his mom down. The snow crunched under his boots as he walked along the sidewalk, passing by the dark, towering buildings that made New York feel both impersonal and imposing. A few blocks away, the glow of their modest apartment building came into view, a small beacon of warmth amidst the bitter cold. As Alex walked, lost in his thoughts, he passed a narrow alleyway between two buildings. The dim light from a flickering street lamp barely illuminated the space, casting long shadows on the ground. Something caught his eye. A figure huddled in the corner, slumped against the brick wall. At first, Alex thought it was just a pile of discarded clothing, but then he saw the man's face, pale, gaunt, and weathered. His clothes were torn, and his hands shook violently as he wrapped them around himself in a desperate attempt to keep warm. The man's face, hollow with exhaustion, seemed to carry a lifetime of hardship. Alex hesitated. He had seen people like this before. Homeless people, struggling to survive in the cold, often ignored by the busy, indifferent crowds that passed them by. But something in this man's gaze caught him, something in the way he looked so helpless and vulnerable. Despite the exhaustion weighing on his own body, Alex felt a surge of compassion. The man's suffering seemed to pull at something deep inside him. Without thinking, he reached into his pocket, fumbling for any spare change he had. It wasn't much, just a few crumpled bills and some loose coins, but it was all he had. The man looked up, his eyes clouded with confusion, and shook his head gently when Alex held out the change. "I'm fine, son," the man murmured hoarsely. His voice cracked and weak. "I don't need charity." Alex's heart sank. He wanted to do more, to help in a way that wasn't just about giving a few coins and walking away. The man needed warmth, shelter, something far more significant than loose change. His mind raced, and without even realizing it, Alex made a snap decision. He pulled off his jacket, the very one that had been his only protection from the cold for weeks, and draped it over the man's shoulders. The cold hit him immediately, sharp and biting, but Alex didn't care. The man needed it more than he did. The old man looked at Alex with wide eyes, his expression a mix of surprise and gratitude. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice trembling. Alex nodded, smiling softly. "I'll be okay. You need it more than I do." With that, he turned and walked away, his hands stuffed into the pockets of his hoodie, his own body shivering in the cold. But as he walked, he felt a strange warmth inside, the kind of warmth that came from knowing he had done something good, something that truly mattered. The next morning, Alex woke up with a pounding headache and a sore throat. He sat up in bed, feeling a dull ache spread through his body. The fever he had been fighting the night before had worsened. His head felt heavy, and his limbs were weak, but he forced himself to sit up. A glance at the clock told him he had just enough time to get ready for school. He couldn't afford to miss another day, not with exams right around the corner. His mother, Emily, was already up, bustling around the kitchen. She glanced over when she heard Alex's footsteps. "Alex, honey, you don't look good," she said, her voice tinged with concern. "You should stay home today and rest. I can make you some tea." Alex shook his head, already pulling on his jeans. "I'm fine, Mom. I can't miss any classes. I'll be okay." Emily frowned, but didn't argue. She was used to Alex being stubborn. He had always been independent, never wanting to fall behind. With a sigh, she set down the mug of tea she had been preparing and went to the fridge to grab some fruit for him. "You need to take care of yourself, Alex. You can't keep running on empty." "I will," Alex said, forcing a smile. He took the fruit and the hot breakfast she made for him, but as he pulled on his hoodie, his mother's worried gaze followed him. The cold had crept into his bones, and he knew he wasn't at his best. But he wasn't about to let a little illness stop him from facing the challenges ahead. He had too much to do, too many responsibilities, and he couldn't afford to let anything stand in his way. As he left their small apartment, Alex wrapped his hoodie tightly around himself. It was the only protection he had against the biting wind. He stepped out into the world, his body aching, but his mind focused. Today was another day to prove to himself that he could make it, no matter the obstacles in his way. Alex's footsteps echoed in the hallways of his high school as he walked to his first class. His head throbbed with each step, and the cold from the night before still lingered in his body. The fever had made his limbs feel heavy, like he was walking through thick mud. He tried to ignore the discomfort, but it was hard to focus. As he entered his classroom, he spotted his friends, including Tom, his childhood friend, sitting at their usual spot in the back. Tom looked up as Alex sat down, his eyes immediately narrowing with concern. "Hey man, you don't look so hot. Are you okay?" Alex gave him a half-hearted smile, trying to brush it off. "I'm fine, just a little under the weather. Nothing I can't handle." But Tom wasn't convinced. "You didn't even wear your jacket today. What happened to it?" Alex hesitated. He hadn't really thought about the jacket since the night before. It had been such a spontaneous decision, one driven by the sight of that homeless man shivering in the alley. Now, standing in front of his friends, Alex felt a small pang of doubt. He had given up his only warm jacket to a stranger, someone who wasn't even really homeless. What if it had been a mistake? He shrugged it off and casually explained, "I gave it to a homeless guy last night. He was really cold, and I didn't need it as much as he did." He tried to sound casual, but something in his voice betrayed his unease. Tom looked impressed, but the other kids in the class seemed taken aback. "Dude, that's crazy. I don't know if I could do that," Tom said, his tone admiring but tinged with disbelief. "That's some serious selflessness." Alex nodded, trying to ignore the knot in his stomach. "Yeah, well, I guess it felt like the right thing to do at the time." But even as he said it, doubt crept into his mind. The more he thought about it, the colder he felt. His body was aching from the chill, and the thought of walking around without his jacket gnawed at him. What if he had made a mistake? What if he needed it more than he thought? As the day dragged on, the cold inside Alex's body seemed to seep deeper. He couldn't concentrate during lessons, his mind constantly drifting back to the homeless man and the decision he had made. By the time the bell rang, signaling the end of school, Alex was exhausted, both physically and mentally. That evening, after trudging home through the cold streets once more, Alex was greeted by an unexpected sight. A sleek, black luxury car was parked in front of their apartment building, its headlights casting a warm glow against the icy sidewalk. It seemed completely out of place in their modest neighborhood. Alex slowed his pace, his curiosity piqued. A man stepped out of the car, tall and well-dressed in a coat that looked far too expensive for the neighborhood. His face was calm and friendly, and as he spotted Alex approaching, he smiled warmly. "Are you Alex?" the man asked, his voice smooth and confident. Alex froze, confused. Yeah, that's me. Can I help you?" The man didn't miss a beat. "I've been asked to deliver something to you. A gift from someone who wishes to remain anonymous." He handed Alex a small, neatly wrapped box, its gold paper glimmering in the dim light of the street. Alex blinked, still unsure what was happening. "A gift? Who's it from?" The man simply smiled again. "It's from someone who wants to thank you for your kindness. You'll understand when you open it." With that, the man turned and walked back to the car, disappearing into the night as quickly as he had arrived. Alex stood there for a moment, holding the box, trying to make sense of what had just happened. His mind was a blur, and he felt a strange mix of confusion and anticipation. He hadn't expected anything in return for his act of kindness, and yet here he was, standing in front of his apartment with a gift in his hands. A gift for what? He could only guess. When he finally went inside, he set the box down on the kitchen table, his mom's curious eyes following him. "What's this?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "I don't know," Alex replied. "A guy just handed it to me outside. Said it was a gift for something I did." His mother frowned slightly, her concern evident. "A gift? From who? This doesn't seem right, Alex. Maybe you should be careful." But Alex was already unwrapping the box. He pulled the top off, and inside, he found something that took his breath away. A thick, high-quality winter coat, its rich fabric and luxurious design far more expensive than anything he had ever owned. Alongside the coat was a handwritten note. Alex unfolded it, his eyes scanning the words. "Dear Alex, I wanted to thank you for your selfless act of kindness last night. You may not know me, but I saw everything. I am not homeless, but I wanted to see the generosity of others. Your act touched me deeply, and I hope this coat will keep you warm for the many days ahead. Please accept this gift as a token of my gratitude. Mr. Jacobs." Alex's heart skipped a beat. The man in the alley, the elderly stranger, he wasn't homeless. He was someone else entirely. A wealthy philanthropist who had been watching, testing the generosity of those around him. And Alex's simple act of kindness had moved him enough to send such an extravagant gift. Alex sat back, stunned. He had never expected anything like this. What started as a small, selfless act had led to something far bigger than he could have ever imagined. The next morning, Alex found a voicemail from the same man, Mr. Jacobs, inviting him and his mother to visit a new community center funded by him. "We'd love for you to see the work we're doing," the message said. "It's a place where we're helping families who, like you, are working hard to make ends meet. I think you'll be inspired." Alex didn't know what to expect, but curiosity got the better of him. He and his mom drove to the center later that day, unsure of what they were walking into. The building was large, modern, and full of life. As they entered, Alex was immediately struck by the bustle of activity, children running around, adults chatting with volunteers, and families sitting together in the waiting areas. The place felt vibrant, alive with purpose. Mr. Jacobs greeted them warmly as they walked in, his kind eyes twinkling behind his glasses. "Alex, Emily, welcome. I'm so glad you could come." As Mr. Jacobs showed them around the center, Alex felt a sense of awe. This was no ordinary place. It was a hub of support, offering everything from job training to food assistance. He could see the impact of Mr. Jacobs' work, and it made him feel hopeful for the first time in a long while. "Thank you for everything," Alex said, his voice sincere. "I had no idea what this was all about. It's incredible." Mr. Jacobs smiled. "Your act of kindness sparked something, Alex. You may not have known it at the time, but you helped create this. Your generosity has inspired others to give back, and that's what we need more of in this world." As they continued to walk through the center, Alex couldn't help but feel like he was on the brink of something new, something bigger than he had ever imagined. The following day, Alex and his mother were invited to return to the community center, this time to see it in full swing. When they arrived, it was clear that Mr. Jacobs was as involved as he had promised. But it was the other volunteers that stood out to Alex the most. The place felt like a second home to so many people. People who were struggling but fighting to get ahead. There were families receiving food, parents taking part in job readiness workshops, and children who seemed to light up the moment they entered the doors, excited to attend the after-school programs. Alex couldn't help but feel inspired as they walked through the bustling rooms, watching children being tutored, families talking to caseworkers, and adults taking part in career-building classes. The center, funded by Mr. Jacobs, had become a beacon of hope for many. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving, about giving people the chance to rebuild their lives with dignity. As they toured the center, Mr. Jacobs introduced Alex and his mom to the staff and volunteers, all of whom were eager to share their stories of how the center had helped them. One of the volunteers, a woman named Maria, explained how the center had helped her get back on her feet after a period of unemployment. "I used to feel like I was stuck," she said, smiling warmly. But this place gave me the tools I needed to rebuild my career. I'm now working as a case manager here, helping others like I was helped. Alex was struck by the sense of community in the center. Everyone seemed genuinely invested in each other's success. It wasn't just about charity, it was about empowering people to change their circumstances. As he watched the interactions between the volunteers and the families, he realized that this was something he wanted to be a part of. He had always been a quiet person, content to stay in the background, but seeing the impact this place had on people made him want to step up, to be part of something bigger than himself. That afternoon, after the tour, Mr. Jacobs pulled Alex aside. "I can see something in you, Alex. A desire to help others. I'd like to offer you an opportunity to get involved here. We're always looking for mentors, especially for the younger kids. Would you be interested?" Alex was taken aback. "Me? A mentor?" Mr. Jacobs nodded. "You've already proven that you care, and I think you could really make a difference. Plus, you'll learn a lot about what it takes to help people turn their lives around." Alex didn't hesitate. "Yes, I'd love to." Alex's first day as a volunteer mentor at the community center was a whirlwind. He had expected to sit in the background, observing how things worked, but Mr. Jacobs had other plans. He was immediately paired with a group of younger kids who were part of the after-school program. They were full of energy, eager to learn, but also in need of guidance. Alex found himself sitting down with a group of 10-year-olds, helping them with their homework, guiding them through math problems and English assignments, and listening to their stories. At first, Alex felt a bit out of his element. He was used to being the quiet one, the one who did his work and kept his head down. But as the kids warmed up to him, he began to feel more comfortable. They started to ask him questions, not just about school, but about life in general. One girl, named Lily, seemed especially curious about Alex's story. "How did you end up here?" she asked one day. "I mean, this is like a place where you can get help with stuff, right?" Alex hesitated for a moment, unsure how much to share. But he realized that his experience, giving his jacket to the homeless man, being part of a community that understood hardship, might be something these kids could relate to. He smiled softly. "Yeah, this is a place that helps people, but it's also a place where you can give back. I'm here because I've learned that sometimes helping others helps you too." Lily's eyes lit up. "That's cool. So, you're not just here to help us with homework, you're helping us with life too?" Alex nodded, feeling a sense of purpose he hadn't felt before. He was more than just a volunteer now. He was part of something larger, a movement that was helping to change lives one small step at a time. And the more time he spent at the center, the more he realized that he wanted to make a real difference. The act of kindness he had shown to a stranger in the cold had set a chain of events in motion, leading him to a place where he could truly help others. As Alex spent more time volunteering, he grew closer to the kids in the program. He learned their stories, their struggles, and their hopes. And in return, they taught him just as much about resilience, determination, and the power of community. He became more than just a mentor. He became a role model, someone these kids could look up to, someone who understood what it was like to face obstacles, but keep moving forward. News of Alex's story began to spread beyond the walls of the community center. His act of kindness, the simple gesture of giving his jacket to a homeless man, had inspired more people than he could have ever imagined. The story was shared by local news outlets, and soon, people from all over the city started showing up at the center, eager to contribute in whatever way they could. Tom, who had been one of Alex's closest friends, was particularly inspired. He had watched Alex go from a quiet, hard-working student to someone who was making a real impact in their community. Seeing his friend's transformation, Tom felt compelled to do more than just watch. He began organizing charity events at the center, rallying the community together to help those in need. It wasn't just about donations. It was about creating opportunities for people to give their time and skills to make a real difference. At one of the events, Alex gave a short speech, sharing his journey from the cold streets of New York to becoming a mentor at the center. He talked about how one small act of kindness had led to a ripple effect, inspiring not only himself, but also everyone around him. As he spoke, he could see the impact of his words. People were moved, motivated to help in whatever way they could. "I didn't do anything special," Alex said, his voice steady and confident. "I just did what I thought was right, but sometimes that's all it takes. A little kindness goes a long way." The crowd erupted into applause, and for the first time, Alex truly felt the power of his actions. He wasn't just a part of a movement, he was helping to create one. What had started as a small personal act had turned into something much bigger, a movement of kindness and generosity that was changing lives. Months later, Alex found himself walking home from the community center with Lily, a bright smile on his face. The once quiet, introverted teenager was now a confident young man, filled with purpose and a sense of belonging. The warmth of the winter coat that Mr. Jacobs had given him was a constant reminder of how far he had come. He had gone from feeling invisible, lost in the chaos of his everyday life, to finding his place in a community that valued him, not just for what he could give, but for who he was. As they walked through the snow-covered streets, Alex reflected on how much had changed. The coat, which had once been a symbol of his own vulnerability, was now a symbol of his growth. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could lead to the most profound changes. Lily, who had become one of Alex's closest friends, turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said, "you've really changed things around here. I've never seen anyone work so hard to make a difference. You've made this place feel like a family." Alex smiled, grateful for her words. "It's not just me. It's all of us. We're all in this together." And as they continued their walk home, Alex knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he wouldn't face them alone. He had found his purpose, and he had found a community that would always be there for him, just as he would always be there for them. It was a new beginning, not just for him, but for everyone who had been touched by his act of kindness. Alex stood on the steps of the community center, looking out over the busy streets of New York. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the skyline, and the cold air had lost its biting edge. It was a peaceful evening, one that felt different from all the others. The chaos of his old life, the long hours at school, the struggles of getting by, now seemed distant. He thought back to that night when he had given his jacket to the elderly man in the alley, how a single, simple act of kindness had changed everything. At the time, Alex had no idea how far that gesture would reach, how it would ripple through his life and the lives of so many others. He had only known that someone needed help, and he couldn't stand by and do nothing. Now, as he watched children run past him, heading to the after-school programs, as families gathered for dinner in the center, Alex knew that kindness wasn't just about grand gestures. It was about the small, everyday choices we make to care for one another. It was about seeing someone in need and doing what we can to help, even if we don't fully understand the impact at the time. Through his journey, Alex had found not only a new path for himself, but also a new family in the community that had embraced him. His act of kindness had inspired others, creating a movement of people who, like him, were willing to give back, to share, and to help lift each other up. His story, one of generosity and selflessness, had become a beacon for others who were lost or struggling, showing them that even the smallest act could make a world of difference. Alex knew that life would always have its challenges. There would be difficult days, moments of doubt and obstacles that seemed insurmountable. But he also knew now that he didn't have to face those challenges alone. He had a purpose, a community, and a heart that was open to the needs of others. And with that, Alex felt ready for whatever the future held. Because sometimes it only takes one small act of kindness to change everything. And for Alex, that one act had made all the difference. Thank you all for following and listening to Alex's story till the very end. We hope this story has given you profound insights into kindness and the power of small yet meaningful actions. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on our latest videos. Share this story with your friends and family so we can spread these positive messages to everyone around us. Thank you for your support. Wishing you all a wonderful day and see you in the next video.